Om Asato Ma Sadgamaya Tamaso Ma Jyotirgamaya Mrityorma Amritam Gamaya. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Good evening, everyone. Nice to see you all again. And sorry I missed the big Diwali last Saturday. I was out of the area, unfortunately, but I heard it was a rousing success. So first of all, I want to hear from you guys about how it went, because the topic today is the spiritual significance of Diwali. So I thought it would be appropriate to just talk about how it went first. So yeah, explain how the format also and
on campus or
no, in the Diwali event.
okay. We had a good puja. We had a nice puja.
How long did that last?
We had a puja for 10 minutes.
It was a Lakshmi puja.
Yeah, we did Mahalakshmi Ashtakam, and we also chanted Ramakrishna Order.
Right.
So we had a theme of some people regard Diwali as a new year. So we wanted to celebrate by celebrating Lakshmi and also the return of Rama. So we wanted to do something for Rama as well.
Good.
So that's chant lasted for like 10 minutes, and we had Aarti.
Right. Who were the pujaris? You and
Me and Savish.
Shabarish, both of you. Good. Okay. And then a huge string of performances, right?
Yeah.
And I heard it didn't even start till like 8 or something.
Yeah, it was.
It started at
Started-
7:35.
No,
Yeah, that's quite
like
late.
speeches were. Yeah, but speeches were like.
Oh yeah,
Back
we
to
had
back, we had
we
3 or 4 speeches.
we had speeches by the USC president,
Right.
Swami Ji,
Yeah.
and Dean of ORSL.
Oh,
I think we had-
Varun was
yeah,
there.
Varun.
But, and also the
And
lawyer.
we had we had a lawyer.
Yeah.
We had an immigration lawyer, Indian origin immigration lawyer. Talk about.
But was that because of
No,
this,
I
he
think it's
sponsored or
just, he was
because
just a guest of
Governor.
honor.
Oh,
Yeah. So
okay. Not
he-
because of this H1B situation and all that, huh?
I don't think so.
Okay.
He was just a guest of honor.
Okay, I see. Okay, good. And then a huge string of performances. And when did it end finally?
10 o'clock.
Ten.
Okay, 10. So it's, okay. Good. So it went well. Okay, good. Okay, so yeah, so we're talking about the spiritual significance of Diwali. First of all, I started with the mantra. Tell me what the mantra means, the one that I recited in the beginning. Does anyone know? Asato ma sadgamaya.
He said, bring me from ignorance to,
There are three things.
bring me from
Asato ma
darkness to light.
No, the first one is asato ma sadgamaya. And then tamaso ma jyotirgamaya, mrityor ma amritam gamaya. So let's start with the first part of it. So it's a prayer. It's an ancient Vedic prayer. O Lord, lead us from asat to the sat.
And truth to the truth.
So asat, you can say, yeah, from falsehood to reality, but there are different ways of translating sat and asat. Sarvapriyanji, who's a follower of classical Advaita, he'll always say from the unreal to the real. I like to say from the transient to the eternal. Okay, so that's the first phrase. And then tamaso ma jyotirgamaya. That's
Darkness to
exactly from darkness to light. That's especially significant for Diwali, because that's really the basic symbolic significance of Diwali. That's why it's a festival of lights. That's why we have lights all over the place on Diwali day, right? So this prayer is very apt for that. And then the third phrase is
mortality to immortality.
yeah, mrityor ma amritam gamaya. Take us from mrityu to amrita, from mortality, from death to immortality. Yeah.
What does light signify?
Yeah, exactly. Good. So it's a good segue into the beginning of our talk. So what does light signify? Why do we have all these lights?
Knowledge.
There's a profound spiritual significance, and it signifies many things, but one of the main things is spiritual knowledge, spiritual illumination, spiritual realization, enlightenment. The light signifies everything that's positive, uplifting, divine in our lives. And darkness representing everything that is undivine. And so the fundamental spiritual significance of Diwali is it's a celebration of the triumph of the divine over the undivine. The triumph of our higher nature over our lower nature. The triumph of the higher self over the lower self. You know, in the Mundaka Upanishad, you guys, are you familiar with this parable of two birds. Nobody knows the parable of two birds? It's a very beautiful parable. There's a bird on a tree, and it hops from branch to branch, and there's some fruits on the tree. And it gets attracted to the fruits, and so it eats the fruit. And sometimes it's very sweet fruit, and so it's happy. And then it hops, and then it gets bored, and it goes to another fruit, and it's very bitter. And oh, why did I eat that fruit? And then it keeps hopping. And once in a while, as it's eating those fruit, it looks up and it sees this beautiful, majestic bird perched much higher on the same tree. And that higher bird is so content with itself that it doesn't bother to look around or eat any fruit. It's perfectly content within. And so that the bird who's suffering, who's like, vacillating from enjoyment and suffering and hopping from branch to branch, restless, once in a while looks up at that and wonders like, wow, I wish I was that bird, But then we'll go back to its normal hopping and all that. And then as it hops from branch to branch, it slowly comes closer and closer to that upper bird until finally it merges into the upper bird and it realizes I was that upper bird all along. So really that's the significance of Diwali. Each of us is on a spiritual journey, and most of us are identified with the ego, the small I. And the journey, the adventure of spiritual life is to realize our higher divine nature. And so that's what Diwali is all about, actually. It signifies the triumph of our divine nature over our lower nature. Okay, and so that's why I'm happy that we did a puja in the beginning of the Diwali. That's very important to set the kind of spiritual tone for the whole event. Yeah.
What's puja?
Oh, okay. What is puja? Good question. Puja means ritualistic worship of the divine in any form or aspect. And Hinduism is famous for celebrating the divine in many different forms and aspects, because thanks to this wonderful doctrine of Ishtadevata. Some of you who are regular attendees will know. What is Ishtadevata?
Personal God.
Personal.
Well, yeah, but your preferred form of the personal God, right? So not just personal God. Personal God means God who loves us, responds to our prayers and all that. But Ishtadevata means each of us, because of what we've done in our past lives, will feel naturally inclined to worship one form of God over others. And that's the Ishtadevata. And often it's translated as chosen deity, the God that we choose, but that sounds too kind of hubristic in a way, because it's not us choosing God, but God chooses us. So it's the form in which God lovingly manifests himself to us. That's the idea. And so in Hinduism, you get all these wonderful spiritual celebrations and pujas where we worship different forms of the divine. And so they had a Lakshmi puja, but we also have Rama puja, we have Ganesha puja, we have Kali puja, and there's so many, right? They're countless. And in different parts of India, you'll find different deities worshipped. In some places, Hanuman, and so on. Some places, it's Vishnu. But one thing that's amazing about Hinduism is that almost all Hindus intuitively know, no matter what form of God I'm worshiping, I'm not going to put down your God, other people's God. We know that there's one divine manifesting in these different forms, right? So it's not polytheism, it's monotheism, or it's not even monotheism. What's the term?
Polymorphic monism.
Very good, good. I've got good students here. Polymorphic monism. Ooh, I promised I would bring business cards. Did I bring them? I think I did actually. So remind me at the end.
Okay.
I'll give them to you. Yeah, good. Polymorphic monism. That is the Hindu position, in my opinion. So monism. Why monism? Because there's only one divine. So it's not polytheism. But polymorphic, because there are many forms of the divine. That one divine will lovingly manifest in countless forms to us. Sri Ramakrishna would give the example of an infinite ocean of Satchitananda forming into ice in different places. Each one of those forms of ice corresponds to different forms of the divine. Yeah.
Thank you for explaining that.
Mhm.
What does that one divine, what is that called?
What is the one divine called? There are different names. So in our Vedantic scriptures, the term is Brahman. But sometimes you'll find terms like Ishvara, And then in more devotional scriptures, you're going to find terms like Bhagavan,
Paramatma.
and then Paramatma. And Paramatma can have different meanings depending on which tradition you're following. And then they're just names of the divine with different forms, So of course you know some of them, right? Shiva, Ganesha. You don't know any of these? Okay, all right.
I mean, I didn't grow up in this.
Oh, okay. Okay, all right, sorry. So there's Shiva, there's Ganesha, there's Rama, they're incarnations as well. There's another form of God that God can actually incarnate in the form of a human being, and not just once. Like in Christianity, it's once Christ, right?
They're also waiting for him to reincarnate.
Christ.
Yeah.
Yeah.
To be
Well,
resurrected,
yeah.
right? But he was already resurrected, I guess. But they say the sole begotten Son. That's part of the creed, as far as I'm aware. I once asked. There's this very famous professor at Harvard that I'm friends with, Professor Francis Clooney. He's a Catholic Jesuit, and he's been a lifelong scholar of Hinduism. From a very young age, he's specialized in Hinduism. He's written wonderful books on Hinduism. He wrote a book with Oxford called Hindu God, Christian God. And so he gave a talk in our Santa Barbara convent in January. I drove him up, and he gave a talk based on his memoir. He wrote a memoir called Hindu and Catholic Priest and Scholar, a Love Story. It's a very interesting memoir. And so he talked about his lifelong sort of reverential study of Hinduism as a Catholic Jesuit and how the melding of worlds. And so in the Q&A, I asked this question. I said, you've been talking a lot about how when you immerse yourself in a totally different culture, you open yourself to learning and changing and evolving in different ways. So I asked him, after your lifelong immersion in Hindu thought, have you felt compelled to modify or revise or change or challenge certain aspects of your own Catholic worldview? And I gave some examples, and one of them was this. I said, look, in as far as I'm aware, in Catholicism, God has only reincarnated once as Christ, and he won't reincarnate again. He won't, yeah. And then I also said, and what about the Hindu doctrines of karma and rebirth? And so I said, in Hinduism, God incarnates multiple times, right? And in Hinduism, we have these doctrines of karma and rebirth. So, to what extent, if at all, have your beliefs and your belief system, has it evolved in light of your study of Hinduism? And he gave the cagiest answer, because I think as a Jesuit, he can't officially, say anything. He was a kind of wishy-washy non-answer, and then the recording stopped. Then he apologized and said, "Sorry, I couldn't give you a straight answer to that question." So that's the thing. But that's because some other religions, at least, are a little bit more doctrinally kind of bound in a certain way or narrow, Whereas in Hinduism, it's a wonderful thing that in a single household you can have a mother worshiping Ganesha and a father worshiping Hanuman and a son worshiping, Kali and so on. And we're all just, Hindus, and nobody's looking down on anyone else. And so that's the greatness of Hinduism. And so Diwali is one of many celebrations. And another thing, this is another, just in the context of Diwali, in different parts of India, Diwali has different meanings, okay? And it's associated with different deities, different forms of God. Okay, so in one part of India, Rama, what's the main mythological significance of Rama in relation to Diwali? Anyone?
Rama kills Ravana.
No,
Huh?
he returns.
He
kills
He
in
returns,
the-
exactly.
He kills in the.
Okay, Dashara.
He
Yeah.
returns to
Ayodhya,
Ayodhya.
after defeating Ravana.
Yeah.
Exactly, right. So it's the triumph of Rama. So again, see, now you're asking about the significance of the lights, right? So again, it's the victory or the triumph of Rama after killing the demon Ravana. You see? So the triumph of good and the divine over the undivine and evil. Okay? So that's one strand. But then there are other aspects to it. There's also, actually in our tradition, the Ramakrishna tradition, we had a Kali Puja on Diwali. And we had an all-night, very beautiful 5-6 hour Kali Puja from 10 p.m. up to like 4 a.m. Because in Bengal and some other parts of India, Diwali is associated with Kali Puja, the goddess, divine mother goddess. So we can talk a little bit more about that as well. But in other traditions, like for instance, there's Advaita Vedanta, which is the non-dual school. There, they don't believe in a personal God as being the highest. They believe in non-dual pure consciousness. And so for them, Diwali will have a bit of a different significance. The light is the light of the inner Atman, the non-dual Atman, the non-dual self. And it's a celebration of our true identity as non-dual pure consciousness rather than the body-mind complex. Okay, but we should also keep in mind, and this is a kind of, it gets philosophically thorny if you go really into the weeds here, but I'm giving a broad explanation here. Even in traditions within Hinduism that believe in a personal God, they still believe in an Atman. Okay, so in devotional traditions, the Atman is the Jivatma. What is a Jivatma? It's the individual soul. The individual soul. So you have one Jivatma, she has a different Jivatma, she has a different Jivatma. And that Jivatma is the entity that reincarnates from birth to birth. Okay, so after we die, I was going to say you die, that sounds morbid. So after I die, my Jivatma will... I don't want to curse anyone. So anyway, so after I die, my Jivatma will leave this physical body along with what? Quiz on my book, Karma and Rebirth in Hinduism. What does a Jivatma leave with, according to Vedanta? Yeah, anyone?
The mind and the body.
Body mind.
Well, no.
The subtle body.
Yeah, the subtle body, exactly.
Isn't Jivatma or something?
No. Uh-oh, we need to review some things. Okay, so I'm going to recap this a little bit. Okay, for those of you who are new, at least for this semester, I wrote a book recently called Karma and Rebirth in Hinduism, and we talked about it for a few classes. And one of the big questions within Hinduism is, what exactly reincarnates from birth to birth, right? This is a question that has occurred to a lot of people, I'm sure. And the interesting thing is, if you go deep into the Hindu tradition, you'll find that there are different answers to that question. And so Nyaya gives the answer, the Atman, the Jivatma, the individual soul. Okay, just the Atman. Sankhya, which is a much older Indian philosophical school, Sankhya gives the answer, the subtle body. And then Vedanta will say the individual soul, the Jivatma, plus the subtle body. Okay. So that's the Vedantic answer. It's the Jivatma plus the subtle body. So Aditya is asking, well, why isn't the Jivatma the same thing as the subtle body? What is the difference between the Jivatma and the subtle body? Anyone?
Because Jivatma is a causal body, like it is affected by the karma we do in this country.
It's sort of the other, well, see, the subtle body is, first of all, non-physical. This is one way of simply understanding the difference. The subtle, the Jivatma, the individual soul, is non-physical, it's immaterial. It's a kind of spiritual entity, okay? The subtle body is a subtle form of matter. It's a subtle form of physical matter, actually. The mind is a subtle form of matter, interestingly.
Yeah. So that means that body-mind complex is that what we leave, and then our Jivatma is what?
Well, hold on. So then so we have to split up the body-mind complex, because we leave the physical body behind, obviously, because it's dead. It's a corpse, right? So the physical body doesn't go with us. It's the Jivatma, the immaterial soul, in association with the subtle body, which is the mind. So it separates the physical body from the mind, and the Jivatma says, mind, you come along with me. You understand? And so you're asking about karma and stuff. So all the karma and stuff is stored in the subtle body, actually. Everything we've done in this life and in past lives is stored up in the subtle body, in the form of samskaras, latent mental impressions. And the Jivatma goes along with that. And then both those things together as a unit reincarnates in the next body. So that's the basic idea.
So where does the causal body come into play, though, in that scenario?
Well, okay, so it's kind of there are different paradigms, different typologies within Vedanta, and so one of them is, so its causal body is the English translation of Karana Sharira, as opposed to Sukshma Sharira. So, okay, let's start from the gross body. The grossly physical body is the Sthula Sharira. Okay, the subtle body, the mind, is the Sukshma Sharira, and then the causal body is a Karana Sharira, And again, there might be some variation across traditions within Hinduism, but Advaita Vedanta, for instance, says that it's in the state of deep sleep that you identify with the causal body, with the Karana Sharira. So that we're going to go in a different direction if we start talking about the causal body. But yeah, that's the basic idea, though. Okay. Okay. Other questions? How do we get on this whole track about
Advaita, how they celebrate.
Oh, thank you. That was the whole thing. Okay, right. Okay, right. Oh, no, but I talked about Advaita, and then I said, but even in devotional traditions,
You believe in
there is still a jivatma. They believe in an individual soul, an immaterial soul. Yeah.
I'm not really sure that I'm following it completely, but the best way to think about it is, so when you separate the mind and the body from our soul, it's just two different things. Is there-
Yeah, they're distinct. Yeah, exactly.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Kind of reminds me of like entanglement and stuff,
Mm.
like in physics, where
Mhm.
two things very far apart can be linked.
Yeah, and that's ignorance. I mean, our delusion is that these things are bound up together, right? We suffer from a kind of fundamental confusion or identity crisis, and then spiritual life is about separating out what we're not from what we are, and so we realize, wait a minute, we're not the body-mind complex. We're actually eternal divine souls, separate from the body-mind complex. Okay. So now coming back to devotional traditions, they believe in a jivatma. Every Hindu tradition believes in an individual soul, which is separate from the body-mind complex. Okay. Why? Well, because who or what attains liberation in the end? Because the goal in Hinduism is liberation, right? So who attains liberation? It's the individual soul, yeah. Right? And actually, at the time of liberation, the subtle body dissolves finally, because you're not going to be reborn again, so you don't need the subtle body. And the subtle body is a kind of bondage at the end of the day. So it's just the pure, liberated soul.
What happens to the causal body at that point, though?
That also it's not
Also
that won't be there
dissolves.
either. There's just the non-material soul, yeah. And then there are two ways of being liberated in Hindu traditions. In devotional traditions, typically it's an eternal heaven, and the liberated soul will dwell with their beloved personal God, basically. And so that's kind of similar to the Christian heaven or the Muslim heaven, that kind of thing. But then Advaita Vedanta says, they say even the jivatma is a lower truth. From the highest standpoint, there's only non-dual Brahman, non-dual pure consciousness. And when I attain liberation, I realize that even my individuality was part of the illusion, was actually part of the dream. And that I was non-dual Brahman all along. Dreaming, and not even that's not quite right, because Brahman can't dream. And so yeah, I mean, that also implies a kind of, that Brahman is subject to ignorance, which is not possible. But at least metaphorically, we can talk about how this whole thing is Brahman's dream in that sense. And so in devotional traditions too, it's really important that we try to identify with the deeper soul within us rather than the body-mind complex. So some people make the mistake of thinking that this whole talk of Atman and soul, Advaita has a monopoly on that language, but that's not true at all. In fact, Ramanuja, I've talked about this a lot in previous classes, Ramanuja, a great bhakta, Vishishtadvaita Vedanta, used to say, to be eligible to practice bhakti yoga, to really feel natural longing for and devotion toward Vishnu, toward the personal God, first you have to practice Jnana Yoga. And Jnana Yoga is meditating on your true nature as a jivatma, as an individual soul, separate from the body-mind complex. Because only after you break your identification with the body-mind complex can you really feel that longing for God. Because it's only as soul that you are a part of the divine, where you're really a spark of the divine fire. Okay, does that make sense? And so Diwali encompasses all of this. The idea is the triumph of our higher spiritual self, the soul, over the ego, over selfishness, over our mistaken identification with the body-mind complex. Okay, so that's another part of it. Yeah. What about Krishna? We haven't talked about the mythology of Krishna in relation to Diwali. Anyone know?
Narakasura.
Very good, exactly. So Krishna kills the demon Narakasura. Okay, in the Krishna mythology. And so what do these demons signify, by the way? Whether it's Ravana in Ramayana, evil, selfishness, yeah, the lower propensities, the things that take us further away from God. And so many of the Hindu texts talk especially about kama, which means lust or desire, anger, krodha, lobha, greed, and then a number of other qualities like that. But what they all have in common is these are all selfish qualities rooted in the small I, that lower bird, the ego. Okay? And so again, Diwali signifies the triumph of the higher spiritual self over egoism and over selfishness. Okay? And then, of course, Lakshmi. What is the significance of Lakshmi in relation to Diwali?
According to the story, she came out of the whole
Shiva
churning
Saga.
of the ocean. right?
Yeah,
So,
on this day, right?
Yeah, on that day.
So that's why she's also
Celebrate.
worshipped on this day. Yeah, good.
I like to see it as how Hinduism has also defined how material world came into being, and not to completely say okay that's wrong. It's like you celebrate the material world as well, and she's a manifestation of wealth and fortune and all those
Right.
things.
Mhm.
So it's nothing wrong in actually celebrating or wanting to worship or see
Lakshmi.
Yeah, Lakshmi.
Right. Okay. So what she's referring to, for people who may not be aware, Lakshmi is the goddess of wealth, prosperity, right? And yeah, I think it's useful to bring in this Hindu doctrine, this ancient Hindu doctrine of the four purusharthas. Did we talk about
Yeah.
this recently? Yeah. What are the four purusharthas?
Dharma, Artha, Kama, Moksha.
Very good. Okay. Dharma, Artha, Kama, Moksha. Dharma means ethical living. Okay? And then Artha is what's associated with Lakshmi, actually. Artha means material acquisitions, prosperity. Yeah.
What's ethical living in Hinduism exactly?
Good question. You can read, for instance, it's all over the place in the Bhagavad Gita, for instance, like chapter 16 and many other places. And so it's basically any kind of unselfish quality. Okay, so things like compassion, daya is a Sanskrit term. Devotion, having spiritual qualities, being unselfish. Yeah, you name it. I mean, truthfulness, observation of truthfulness is very important. Integrity. What does integrity mean? Does anyone know? What is integrity?
Do right things even if nobody's watching.
Oh, that's an interesting way of putting it. I'm going to give a talk in a few weeks in Hollywood called The Ring of Gyges. Do you know what that is?
No.
No one knows? Oh, this is where your
Yorgos.
man would have been very helpful. Because he's Greek. Yorgos is Greek. So, Plato.
Yeah. Oh, can you say that again?
Your man, Yorgos, which one?
No, the
No.
Plato part.
Yeah, okay, so Plato is from Plato's Republic, the Ring of Gyges. So, Yorgos, we miss you, because you would have been able to give a beautiful explanation of the Ring of Gyges. So this, the Lord of the Rings, the whole thing, right, J.R. Tolkien, he had read Plato, and probably this idea of the ring is inspired by Plato's Ring of Gyges, actually. Okay, so the idea is, Socrates is having a debate with someone else about the nature of justice and doing good. Okay, why do people do good? And one guy, he brings in this analogy, this metaphor, or story of this Ring of Gyges. And he says, imagine this. Imagine a ring. If you put it on, it makes you invisible. And you can do whatever you want, undetected. And so this guy says, look, if that was the case, how many people who wore that ring do you think would still do good in this world? Very few, if any. And so the moral being, we only do good because we fear the consequences of being caught, basically, of being found out.
Hmm.
So if we can get away with it,
Is this related to Immanuel Kant's Kantian ethics?
I think we can make links, and let's not get too deep. But it's a good question. That's a good
Yeah.
philosophy. Yeah, but I think we can link it to categorical imperative in some ways. So anyway, so yes, with the Ring of Gyges, that's a kind of devil's advocate position. This person saying we only do good because we're under the public eyes, the public gaze.
Not just like humans, right? It's also like people do good because they think God is watching them all the time.
Well, so that's an interesting thing, but that's if you have faith.
Yeah, yeah.
That's why it's so important to have faith, because if you do, then you're gonna feel a little bit of your pangs of conscience if you do something bad, right?
Yeah.
Even if nobody else in the world is watching, but you know God is still watching, because God watches everything, right? Yeah, but then what you said is already taking a step in a spiritual direction. You see what I mean? And it shows that you have at least some basic faith in God, right? So, but then the Socrates' position is no, that's not the case. And you'll find some people who are highly ethical, sometimes very saintly, who will do good regardless of who is watching or not watching. And in fact, the most spiritual people don't care in the least about whether someone's seeing them doing whatever, and Sri Ramakrishna used to say, a true renunciate is somebody who, when nobody's watching and they have an opportunity to engage in all kinds of worldly enjoyments, they choose not to, even though they know they can get away with it. And he says the opposite is somebody who he puts on a big show of like wearing this kind of clothes. I'm a big monk, but it's only in public. But if he's in a situation where he can engage in enjoyment undetected, then he'll do it. And he says that person is not a genuine renunciate. Okay? It's not like a deep renunciate, or a natural renunciate. So coming back to integrity, the way that Sri Ramakrishna would put it is, as a spiritual aspirant, it's really important to align. In Bengali, the phrase is, he would always do this. He would use wordplay. So he would say, "Mon mukh ek karo." Anyone who knows Hindi could probably figure out. Mon is mana, and mukh is the same, right? Mouth.
Yeah.
Yeah, mukh. Right. Yeah. Mon mukh ek karo. Make sure that what you say and what you project outwardly to the rest of the world is aligned with what you are inwardly. It's not so easy, actually. But if you can do that, and so the Ring of Gyges is a good test for all of us, actually. Put on that ring and ask yourself, each one of us needs to ask, and these are hard questions, and they're, but ask yourself, go through your whole day, and you ask yourself, like, would I do the same kinds of things if I was invisible as I would do, or would I change certain things? And then that's a good way to find out where the shoe pinches. And then you can make these, not to beat yourself up, but the idea is to then, try to do better. Okay, so dharma, artha, kama, moksha. So coming back to that, so the four fundamental values in Hindu life: dharma, ethical living; artha, material prosperity, acquisitions. All that's valid. It's legitimate. That's what you were saying about Lakshmi, right? Kama, it's also legitimate to fulfill your worldly desires. In fact, it's necessary to do that, ultimately to reach the highest spiritual goal. Why? Because as Sri Ramakrishna used to say, you will not feel the true spirit of renunciation and kind of detachment and disenchantment with worldly things until you have passed through the end of enjoyments. It's just the lesson of life, right? I mean, you're all young, but you're already seeing that, and the older you get, the more you realize that. Been there, done that. One of my favorite poet is T.S. Eliot, or my favorite Western poet. I have to qualify that now because. So has anyone read the love song of J. Alfred Prufrock? It's a famous high school poem. American high school kids will read it. The love song of J. Alfred Prufrock. You did, right? Okay, there you go.
A while.
A long time ago.
Yeah.
Yeah. But he has these great lines where he says, "For I have known them all already, known them all." It's like been there, done that kind of thing. Yeah. And he also has this great line, "To prepare a face to meet the faces that we meet." That's a great one. Society is so fake. A lot of it is. It's become even more superficial with social media, Instagram. It's all about like external appearances, right? And people project what they're not because they want more likes and views. And people say, "Oh, you live the most glamorous. Oh, I wish I had your life." But then deep down, there's a sadness there, right? That's why they spend so much time on social media projecting themselves. And so anyway, I think we need Vedanta more than ever now, and try to align your inner with the outer. That's really, really important. That's also what Diwali is about, actually. Let the inner light shine externally, and don't focus so much. Because of social media and internet and all these things, people have become very body conscious. And their identity is so closely bound up with their body, and so they try to beautify the body. Look at how beautiful I am, and wow. And Vedanta says that is not a recipe for happiness or contentment, right? In fact, it's a recipe for suffering. The more you identify with the body, the more you're going to suffer at the end of the day. Why? Because the body it's going to look uglier, it's going to age, and ultimately it's going to die. No matter what, what Walt Disney, the famous Walt Disney, he was so obsessed with the idea of being immortal, and he didn't believe in a God, as far as I know. And so he had because he's filthy rich, he had his body cryogenically frozen.
Just his head.
Just his head?
I think so.
Oh, that's interesting. So where is it right now?
I heard that it was in a freezer, and then there was a problem with the facilities, and it thawed.
Oh, okay. Poor guy, poor Disney. Okay, so. But look over the ages. Look at Egypt, right? The ancient Egyptians had this idea of mummies, and so there's these. In certain cultures, there's this idea that you can immortalize the body. And in Hinduism, I'm writing on this right now, actually, because I'm writing a book on Sri Aurobindo. Sri Aurobindo, who was not coincidentally influenced also by a French woman named the mother, Mira Alfassa, they emphasized, and they brought in this idea into Hinduism, actually. They said that the goal, actually, is not just liberation, but to bring the kingdom of heaven into this earth. And part of that means this body should become immortal. And they tried to make their bodies immortal. It didn't quite work. They both died eventually. But that was part of their spiritual vision. Okay, but that's a separate thing. But in general, Vedantic traditions say, don't worry so much about the body. There's a beautiful incident that took place in Cairo, in Egypt, long back in the 1890s. Swami Medhananda, do you know this incident?
No, I know what you're going to say.
Yeah.
He was walking through the red light.
Exactly. So he is walking with a group of devotees, disciples. One of them is a famous opera singer named Madame Emma Calvé. She was a very famous opera singer at that time. So it's her reminiscence, actually. So they're walking through, they happen to walk, not like they chose to go to, but they happen to walk in the red light district of the city. And there are these street women on the other side of the street who saw that he was wearing this kind of clothes. And so they started kind of heckling him and taunting him. And he walks over to them, and tears start flowing from his face. And he says, poor creatures, they have placed their divinity in their physical beauty, and now look at them. And he just starts crying, and they become so flustered when they see this holy man crying, looking at them. And they bow down at his feet, and they kiss the hem of his robe, one of them or two of them. And they say, and they spoke Spanish, I guess they're from some Spanish-speaking country. So they said, hombre de Dios, which means man of God, man of God. So there's very beautiful stories about how we're not the body, actually, and that the more we identify with the body, the more miserable we'll become, actually. That's very, very important. And that same Swami Medhananda, at the moment he died, at the moment he left his physical body, he communicated with his brother disciple, Swami Ramakrishna Order, who was sitting in South India at the time, in Chennai. No phones, and no whatever, internet of and he said to him mystically, I have Shashi, he called him Shashi. Shashi, I have spat out my body. I have spat out my body. So that's the idea of Vedanta. Okay. Okay, one thing I wanted to emphasize is because I think it's a less well-known aspect of Diwali. Most of us associate, I think, Diwali with Rama. That's what I think of all the mythologies. I think the Rama one is the most common. So I wanted to emphasize a little bit about how beautiful it is and how powerful it is as spiritual aspirants to worship the divine as Divine Mother, either as Lakshmi or as Kali or as Durga. Okay, because that's another important aspect of Diwali, but I think it's underemphasized. So there are a lot of beautiful things about thinking of God as mother. Why? Because if you just ask yourself, of all the different kinds of human relationships, where do you find the example of the purest love? Yeah, mother's love, right? Of all the human relations you can find. Now, is there still some selfishness? Maybe, because most mothers will love their own kid more than other people's kids, right? So that means that there's still some. But the point is, compared to any other human relationship, it's the most selfless, the purest kind of love, right? And we all have this natural, instinctive love for and attraction toward our mothers, right? And so if you think of God as our own mother, as our divine mother, these natural feelings of devotion, of love, of longing, they come almost automatically, you know. Sri Ramakrishna used to say, imagine a baby sucking on a red pacifier. It's sucking on it, it's very happy, right? So long as it's happy with the pacifier, the mother will be cooking in the kitchen, right? She'll be glancing over and making sure the kid's okay, not doing anything stupid. But other than that, she's in the kitchen doing her own thing. The moment that baby gets fed up with the pacifier, it spits it out of its mouth and starts crying, "Ma, ma," then the mother will come running out of the kitchen and take it into its arms. So we're all in the situation of that baby with the pacifier, to varying degrees. What's the pacifier? It's whatever you're worldly, whatever you're attracted to in this world. Whatever worldly attachments you have, that's our pacifier. We have multiple pacifiers, or the pacifier is a compound pacifier with many things. It's our status, it's our, our money, it's our emotional attachments, it's this or that. There's so many things, our addictions. And when we get tired, we call on Mother. And in fact, once we can, by calling on Mother, she'll reduce our worldly attachments, actually. So let me read you, this is a dialogue with Sri Ramakrishna. A devotee named Troiloko, in 1884, he asked Sri Ramakrishna, what is the way to dry up the craving for worldly pleasure? And Sri Ramakrishna answers, pray to Divine Mother with a longing heart. Her vision dries up all craving for the world and completely destroys all attachment to lust and greed. It happens instantly if you think of her as your own mother. She is by no means a godmother, so she's your real mother. That's the way you should think of her. She is your own mother. With a yearning heart, persist in your demands on her. You must force your demand on the Divine Mother. She will come to you without fail. God is our very own. We can exert force on her. With one's own people, one can even go so far as to say, you rascal, won't you give it to me? So that's the beauty of mother. See, look at a 2-year-old or a 5-year-old. Mommy, mom, There's no distance, right? There's such an intimacy that the kid will just, he can say anything, pout to her. So we should talk to God in the same way. So long as there's any distance between us and God, God is going to be far away, right? So we have to reduce that distance, that gap. So thinking of God as mother is one amazing way to develop this kind of intimacy with God. Okay, it's really powerful. And then again, another really important aspect of Divine Mother is that she's also extremely fierce. Kali's holding a severed head in her hand. Durga has got a weapon and she's slaying the demons, right? We all know that. So at the same time, a mother is fiercely protective of her children, right? And so we also know that we're protected by Divine. So she's infinitely loving and tender and caring, and at the same time, infinitely powerful and strong, and will protect us. Anytime we call on her, she'll protect us. And so this is wonderful composite of qualities, right, that you find in Mother alone. So do you guys have any questions? Nothing? Good. Yeah. Aditya? No. Okay, you do this kind of... All right, good. You don't have one back there? No? Good. When's the next big festival?
It's in spring.
Ganesha Puja? No. Which one is it? Sankranti. Okay, we usually do Ganesha Puja, Diwali, and then Sankranti.
No, we do a lot of other things.
What are the other ones?
In fall we have 3. We have Ganesha Chaturthi, Dashara, and Diwali.
Diwali. Yeah, I keep missing those.
And then Gudi Padwa, we do Yugadi or Gudi Padwa in spring. And Shivratri is a very nice festival.
Is
Oh,
Dashera
yeah.
the same as Durga Puja?
Yeah.
Yes,
Yeah.
Then I'll mention one more thing, and then if you have questions, let me know. In spiritual life, especially in the devotional path, ultimately we have to surrender to the divine. Total surrender. We have to surrender our self-will, our ego, everything. Body, mind, and soul, we have to give it to the divine. And again, thinking of God as mother is one of the best ways to do that. And Sri Ramakrishna would use the example of, he would distinguish two different paradigms of spiritual practice. One of them is the baby monkey paradigm. The baby monkey paradigm is a paradigm based primarily on self-effort. I have to do this much japa, and I have to pray this much, and I have to do this, and I have to do that, and I, that kind of thing. The baby monkey has to hold on for dear life to the hand of mother monkey, as mother monkey hops from tree to tree. And if the baby lets go of its hold, what happens? It'll fall to the ground and die. Baby monkey will just say mew mew, meow meow, and then mother cat will take it in its mouth and plop it wherever it feels like. So baby monkey, baby cat, the kitten is what we're striving toward. We should try to, in spiritual life, in devotional life, we should try to move away from the baby monkey paradigm ultimately to the baby kitten paradigm and just surrender completely. Let God decide where to put us, what to do with us. And it's easy to talk about and almost impossible to practice, because if you have even a trace of ego or doership, you're not going to be able to feel that total surrender. Yeah. Did you have a question?
No.
Oh, okay. Yeah. So that's another really useful, or another value of worshiping God as Divine Mother. So tell me, in your respective parts, I mean, some of you are from, at least your parents are from India, but which deity is worshipped in the part of India that your family comes from?
For Diwali or in general?
In general.
In my village, we have village god, right? So it's Shiva. So
It's
mostly,
Shiva.
Yeah, Shiva is it. But then in our
Where are you
house,
from?
I'm from Kodagu.
Coorg, yeah, right.
But inside our house, we have all
Many.
gods.
Many.
But
Don't say all, because then
yeah.
that's a challenge that I'll probably come up with when they
But it's also interesting that we worship Kaveri, the river.
Kaveri, the river.
She's a mother.
Right,
for us,
right.
so
Yeah,
she's also
right.
called
Ma
as
Kaveri.
mother.
Yeah.
So these are the two main deities.
Okay, great, yeah. And you? No? Okay, you're not sure. What about you?
Yeah, we also worship Shiva in our family, but we have lots of several gods in our puja room.
Right, yeah. It's very typical. My mom also is full of pictures of God. But what part of India is your family from?
From Hyderabad.
Okay.
And Warangal.
Andhra. In the back there?
We're mostly Hanuman Bhakt.
Uh-huh.
Hanuman
What part of
Chalis.
India is your family from?
Punjab.
Right,
Amritsar.
yeah, cool.
Just all gods.
All gods.
Yeah. Depending on which festival.
Right, okay.
Yeah.
And what part of India are you
Mumbai.
from? Mumbai.
Shiva and Vishnu. But
And you're from?
I'm from Chennai.
Chennai.
My
yeah.
family is from Tanjore. It's a small town in Tamil Nadu, but
Right.
I'm from Chennai.
Okay. Shiva is what
Shiva
you said.
and Vishnu, like
And Vishnu.
yeah. Because for us, it's like Shiva is as same as Vishnu. If you have one god have precedence over the other, it's like two eyes for us, like Shiva and Vishnu.
Right, they're complementary rather
Yeah.
than, okay, that's nice. And you?
Well, Maharaj, like you, I'm from Bengal, so
Mm.
Kali, Durga, and
Right.
I was telling you this, in growing up, my grandparents always had Thakur, Ramakrishna, and
Yeah.
Holy Mother, and
Right,
shrine as
so you
well.
grew up in that
Always,
tradition, yeah.
Yeah.
Cool.
For me, Lakshmi and Hanuman.
Oh, okay. Interesting
so
combo.
Hanuman Chalisa and
Yeah.
Lakshmi, especially for Diwali.
Yeah.
So
Hanuman Chalis is amazing, yeah. And we have a Ramnam every month in our Hollywood ashrama. It's very beautiful.
Which part of India is your parents?
Delhi.
Delhi. Okay, cool.
For me, I think in my grandparents' home, it's always been Krishna.
Mm-hmm.
Krishna. We have huge paintings of Krishna.
Right,
Just
okay.
Krishna, but in my grandma's puja, we have pretty Himachal.
And what part of India are you from?
So originally
Your
from
fam-
Gujarat.
Gujarat, yeah.
But my dad is from Calcutta and my mom is from Hyderabad.
Oh, I think you must have told me this already.
Yeah.
Your dad is Bengali.
Yeah.
Yeah, right,
Yeah.
okay. Are tu bolte paro? You can,
I
no.
can understand.
You can understand a little, but you
just
can't
a
speak.
bit, but I
Okay.
can't speak.
Yeah, okay, cool, yeah, and then. In a
Not
past
that
life, I bet she was Indian, that's why.
Oh, for sure, for sure.
I was very involved, yeah.
Sorry?
I'm very engaged in
Right, right, yeah,
discussion.
yeah, but you're from China, is it?
Yes, I'm from China.
Right.
Because, well, I personally, my parents are, China's a very secular country. I didn't
Mhm.
grow up religious at all.
Right,
I found God 2 years ago at a Catholic school, and then I studied my way in. So I'm an anthropology major. That's why I'm interested.
and then how did you get interested in Vedanta or Hinduism?
I've always been interested in, I guess, like the truth in a way. Like I
Mhm.
want to know the truth
Mhm.
of the world. I guess there's like an inner longing
Mhm.
for God, you could say. So when I first started my spiritual journey, I was at a Catholic school and I was introduced to God in a Catholic sense, but I
Mm.
just don't think I knew somewhere deep down I knew this wasn't everything. So
I see.
yeah, so I moved on to studying Buddhism. I learned about like New Age spirituality. I'm taking a class on Islam, and this past summer I was telling her I read the Gita and the Upanishads, and I was like, this is the core of a lot of like the thread that connects every tradition.
Yeah, that's amazing, that's funny. I went through the same journey myself. When I was in your age, I mean, in college, because growing up, I grew up Hindu, but like I call it culturally Hindu. A lot of you can resonate with that, right? And so, I would go to the pujas, but it was nominal, and nobody explained the spiritual side of things.
Exactly. Yeah.
Yeah, so it's kind of, I became agnostic as a result, but I was a spiritual seeker, and so I started reading the different world's religious scriptures. And I read the same kinds of books, and I started going to Catholic Mass, and my dad was worried that I'd convert to Catholicism. When I was at Berkeley, I went to because I liked it, it was beautiful. And, but then I read the Gita, and the Gita just opened my eyes to what spiritual Hinduism is really all about. And it's so vast and broad. And it really explains the kind of spiritual basis of all the religions, right? And it's because it's so expansive. And then, the rest is history. And then I kind of moved into Vedanta and became a monk. Yeah, so that's really interesting. It resonates.
That's very good.
Yeah, cool. Thanks for sharing that. Yeah. All right. Thank you, everyone. So, any other comments or questions?
I have one about
Mhm.
like, this was at the beginning of the talk about, like you talked about the soul and like the individual soul, and like obviously the goal is liberation for all souls, but what happens like, because for me it's like I've always, when I started practicing Buddhism, I thought the goal was to, rise transcendence, right? Like
Right,
to escape
yeah.
the samsara world, but what's the purpose of that if there's still like, if you've escaped but like there are like 8 billion people still
Who are still suffering? Oh, this is a great question. It's a very deep question. Okay, so the question for those who didn't follow what she said, or because you were speaking kind of in a soft voice, you have learned that in some traditions, like at least some schools of Buddhism, that the goal is liberation or transcendence of this world, so that you don't have to be reborn again, right?
Yeah.
But then you ask, what about all the people here who you leave behind, right? And so actually within Buddhism, for instance, there are different schools of thought on this, okay? And there's a whole school called Mahayana Buddhism, where they make exactly the point you're raising. And they say because of that, the really great souls, the bodhisattvas, are the ones who say, I'm going to defer my own liberation, my own nirvana, so that I can take birth again and serve humanity and help others out of their ignorance. Whereas there are other schools of Buddhism where the be-all and end-all is nirvana and just liberation. And they're like, who cares about let them figure that out for themselves. So there's actually diversity within Buddhism. Now, if you ask about traditions within Hinduism, you find a range of views on this. Let's take Advaita Vedanta first, okay? Shankara's school of Advaita Vedanta, the non-dual school of Vedanta. Now, the thing is, according to non-dual Vedanta, the formula in Sanskrit is Brahma Satyam Jagat Mithya, which means non-dual pure consciousness alone is real. That's what we are in our deepest essence. And everything else is a kind of illusion. Now, if you accept that view, how would they answer your question? Well, let's say that who are those other 8 billion? That's all in my dream. Once I wake up from the dream, do you say, ooh, I better help those dream people that I'm leaving behind? No, they're in the dream. And once the dream breaks, it turns out that none of those people even existed. That's Advaita Vedanta. That's not the tradition I accept. Okay. There are other non-dual spiritual philosophies within Hinduism. A lot of people don't know this. They think that non-duality is Shankara's Advaita Vedanta, but there's also Tantra, which is non-dual. There are many tantric non-dual schools. There's Kashmiri Shaivism, and there is Sri Ramakrishna's philosophy, which I call Vijnana Vedanta. That's also a form of non-duality, but it's a life-affirming non-duality that accepts the reality of everything in this world as a real manifestation of God, of Divine Mother. And in that case, all these people are real. And Sri Ramakrishna would distinguish Jnanis from Vijnanis. These are two terms he used. And the Jnani is somebody who will attain knowledge of Brahman and then leave the body in a state of samadhi and say good riddance to the rest of the world because it doesn't even exist anyway. And then he says, but there's a Vijnani who comes back from the state of samadhi and remains as a bhakta as a liberated bhakta to serve others and to help others out of their ignorance. And so that's kind of like the Vedantic equivalent of the Bodhisattva ideal in Mahayana Buddhism.
So like you achieve liberation, but you still choose to be reincarnated.
Exactly, yeah. And you come back again, but as a divine being, basically.
Yeah.
You're not an ordinary person if you do. Yeah, these people and they'll come to serve. Yeah. And there's also I wrote a whole article on Sarvapalli Radhakrishnan. He has this really interesting view, which is he calls it Sarva Mukti. Sarva means all, and Mukti means
Universal
liberation.
liberation. I think we talked about it in one of our the book talks.
Yeah, on the top, right? Maybe we did, yeah. But there are two. I don't know if I distinguished then between two forms of universal liberation. One is the view that all of us will eventually attain liberation sometime or other, but not at the same time necessarily. So all of us here, sitting here today, all of us will get liberated. But one of us might get it in this lifetime, another one in 10 lifetimes, another one in 1,000 lifetimes. But Radhakrishnan's view is different. His view is we're all getting liberation, the ultimate liberation together. So there are, of course, more spiritually advanced souls than others, right? I mean, he's not an idiot, and he was aware of that. So what happens to people who in this lifetime are very spiritually evolved and they attain quote-unquote liberation? He says they go to what's called Brahma Loka, and they hang out there for a long time. It's this amazingly blissful place, but it's a kind of, in his view, this is not a mainstream Hindu view, but this is his view. He was a great 20th century Indian thinker, philosopher, and he was also the president of India, Sarvapalli Radhakrishnan. And he says they wait there and they enjoy themselves. And then as other souls get liberated, they'll go to that same Brahma Loka. But then when all the people from this world, all 8 billion, whatever, but it becomes much bigger at that point, later in the future, when they all assemble in that Brahma Loka, they all get the ultimate liberation together, the final liberation, which is merging in the non-dual absolute, that kind of idea.
That's like the samsara, like, the 6 realms and the heaven realm. And that's similar to how I feel, it's not true liberation when you're the one seeking nirvana. Like, I think that's still a spiritual ego.
Yeah, you can say it's a higher form of selfishness or something.
Yeah.
And in fact, in our tradition, there's a very important incident that happened in 1886 when the future Swami Medhananda, the person who went on to found our monastic order, his name was Naren. So Naren was obsessed with Shankara's Advaita Vedanta at the time, and so he told Sri Ramakrishna, he kept pestering him, give me samadhi, give me samadhi. His guru was Sri Ramakrishna. He said, I want nothing more than to just immerse myself in samadhi, forget about this world, and just take a little bit of milk or food just to keep the body going. That's it. And Sri Ramakrishna gave him the scolding of a lifetime and said, shame on you. I thought you would be like a great banyan tree, giving shade and shelter to thousands. Now I see you're selfish. You only care about your own liberation, your own salvation. And then he says, aren't you the one, he was a great singer, not him. So he said, aren't you the one who sings, O Lord, thou art all that exists? So if you see everybody as divine, then how can you dismiss it as a dream? Then you'll want to stay here and worship God by serving others. Yeah, I'm going to Boston on Thursday, and then I have a talk at Yale University next week, where the talk is about this topic, actually. The talk is called Many Ultimates, Many Ends, Rethinking Religious Pluralism with Sri Ramakrishna, where I explain Sri Ramakrishna's views on the final state of liberation, basically. And the way I like to think about it is, this is my own metaphor for explaining his view, but I think about liberation as a many-roomed mansion. Okay, a massive mansion with countless rooms. And the Muslim heaven will be one room, the Christian heaven is a separate room, the Jewish heaven is another room, we have Golok and a million Hindu heavens because there are so many different deities. And then the Advaita Vedantins, they don't want to dwell in a heaven. And they're going to say that, so long as I'm in a heaven like that, there's still duality. So that has to be a lower ideal than the ultimate, right? So you can posit an Advaitic room too, where you just merge in non-dual pure consciousness. You dissolve your individuality. So in the Advaita Vedanta school, you don't retain any individuality, actually. You just become one with the non-dual absolute. And so Sri Ramakrishna, he accepts all of these different forms of ultimate liberation. And unlike other Hindu traditions, many other Hindu traditions, what you'll find in other traditions, they'll accept these different lokas, these different realms, but they'll have these hierarchies. And they'll say that one of them is higher than the others. So in Gaudiya Vaishnavism, like the ISKCON tradition, if some of you know about ISKCON, they put Goloka at the very top, which is where Krishna resides. And so that is like that's the highest heaven. And they'll also accept that there are these other realms with Divine Mother, the mother that we were talking about earlier, but they're lower. Shiva is lower, like they put them on a lower footing, Sri Ramakrishna puts them on an equal footing. And so what I'm arguing in my Yale talk is that I'm bringing Sri Ramakrishna in a dialogue with these contemporary philosophers. There's a Christian thinker who's at Yale, actually, named Mark Heim. I hope he comes to the talk. That could be fun. Because I picked Sri Ramakrishna against Mark Heim. His name is S. Mark Heim. He's in the divinity school there. I argue that Sri Ramakrishna gives us a really powerful view for accepting the whole diversity of religious ends, right? That there's so many different ways that the different religious traditions conceive the final end, right? But at the same time, affirming that all these different paths are equally capable of taking us to the highest goal, right? That's what's called religious pluralism. Yeah, thank you. That's a very good question. She must have been a Hindu in a previous birth. Okay, anyone else? Yeah. Oh, you really look like you're raising your hand. All right, good. So we're good?
Yeah.
Okay, thank you everyone, that was great. Om Shanti 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 Hari Om Tat Sat. So the closing mantra is an offering of what we just did to the divine. So then